Coming into this game, there was one thing on everybody's mind. And if you're a Michigan fan and you say this isn't what you were thinking about, you're a damn liar. We all wanted to know, is Blake Corum going to play? Because we all knew that that was the key to winning this game, was a healthy Blake Corum. Ohio State comes out. They got the ball first. They score basically an easy 7, right? Like they just chopped us up. They score an easy 7. It's our turn to respond. Blake Corum gets 2 carries for minimal yardage. He misses what looks like would have been one of his classic cuts. Like it was one he probably could have gone for 40 on. And then you see him get up a little limpy, a little gimpy. He stumbles to the sideline, and we all just look and we're like, he can't go. Like they're like, this is not the Blake Corum that we know. He can't run right now. And so our Heisman hopeful star running back goes out in the first series. We're down 7-0. I got to ask you, Matt, what were you thinking at that moment of the game?
Well, my biggest thought in that moment, I thought Michigan was going to lose, Mike. If I'm being totally honest, and there's really, as a Michigan fan that is familiar with the program, that's followed it for many, many years, who's been in this situation more times than we can count, we all looked at each other after that first drive. I was in a sports bar here in Orlando where it was just a raucous Michigan environment, and you could hear a pin drop in that place. And it was packed, with Michigan fans. So I didn't have high hopes. The odds were certainly stacked against us. And honestly, Michigan had every excuse to go out and lose this football game today. Just like anyone that follows me on Twitter, that I do a score prediction every week. And a lot of Michigan fans saying Michigan was going to lose this game, a high percentage of them, in fact. And and that was before Blake Corum even went down with that knee injury. So I didn't have high hopes. I wouldn't have hated I wouldn't have hated the team if they would have lost the game. You know what I mean? But they put the whooping on that ass. But that's just what I was thinking.
So here's where my mind was at for basically the first 2.5 quarters, right? I actually had a healthier mindset than I do in most Michigan games. Like I am very susceptible to just spiraling and going into a full-blown mental health crisis. I was thinking about this from a kind of a long-term college football playoff perspective. I was like, you know what? Ohio State's really good. Everybody knows they're really good. We want to beat them. I mean, that's all we want every season, is to beat Ohio State and win the Big Ten. Like those are our goals. But then I kind of shifted gears. I'm like, Corum's out. I know that the committee is supposed to take into consideration if a star player is hurt. They've done that in the past, usually with quarterbacks, right? Like if Bryce Young goes down for Bama and they drop a game, the committee is supposed to be like, well, if Bryce Young's back healthy, then it's a different team. So I'm thinking this gives us a little bit of a wiggle room, right? If we don't look terrible and our Heisman hopeful running back is out, perhaps the committee gives us the benefit of the doubt and still puts us in. And so I shifted my mindset to, we got to stay close. We got to score some points and we got to stay close. And so we got back down the field. Jake Moody hits a field goal. It's 7-3. Like, okay, I'm thinking points were there. Ohio State goes down, and then the defense steps up, gets a stop, holds them to a field goal. Now it's 10-3. I can't remember if it was 10-3 at the end of the first quarter, or if that first Cornelius Johnson touchdown happened in the first or not. But anyway, it was like 10-3 right around the end of the first, and then everything started to shift at that point, right? Cornelius Johnson catches a pass from JJ, breaks a tackle, busts a long run. All of a sudden, it's 10-10. Like, now we're cooking. Now we're in this game. We've got life. Anything can happen at this point, right? Like, anything can happen. And sure enough, JJ finds him again for a touchdown. You know, we're going back and forth. We're exchanging blows. At halftime, it's 20-17, right? Because CJ Stroud hits Marvin Harrison Jr. for that that one long pass, which by the way, I was watching that. We brought a safety blitz from way like 20 yards deep on the field. Like there was no way that safety was going to get there. And it left Marvin Harrison Jr. wide open. And I'm sitting there like, I hate that. I hated that call. Bring the safety from the other side. Don't bring it from Marvin Harrison's side. So anyway, Ohio State scores. It's 20-17 at the half. And at halftime, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm actually feeling pretty good. We're on the road at Columbus. We're down 3. JJ's thrown 2 long touchdown passes. I'm a little concerned because we can't run. We like Ohio State, Ryan Day's whole game plan, which was a good game plan, was to bring the linebackers up, bring the safeties up, stop the run. They were doing it in the first half. If you can go back to about halftime, where are you at? 20-17, 17 halftime. Where's your head at that point?
So at about halftime, I honestly felt really good going into halftime. My thoughts had shifted very much from those first couple series where Blake Corum went down and Ohio State sliced us up in the first drive. I had shifted after the Cornelius Johnson touchdown catch. I was feeling a lot better at that point. And to me, the game just had a very eerily similar vibe to last year. You know what I mean? The score ended up being very similar, but even at halftime and through that middle part of the game, you could just kind of feel that same energy and that same mojo. Like they weren't playing Pump It Up at that sports bar that I was at, but it almost like I could hear Pump It Up in my head, like, don't you know, pump it up. Like I could just feel that Michigan momentum building a little bit. And we're a second half team, so I didn't have any doubts that it would at least be a close one down to the wire at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. Like the way that we got there looked very different, right? Like the personality of these two games were very different. You got the weather game where we're just running it down their throat. And then you've got this game where we've got a couple long passes where I'm sure the Buckeyes were feeling like, oh my gosh, we're controlling them. And then we gave up these two fluky passes, right? But I think Michigan fans started to realize these aren't flukes. This is what we've seen all year that we've been so close on, right? Like we've had guys open down the field and we've been so close and JJ's missed them or we've had some drops. And sure enough, in this game, we started to hit them. And I think it breathed life back into the Michigan players, the coaches, the fan base. And I agree with you completely. I was getting very similar vibes to the previous season where it was like, you know what? Like we can beat these guys. We can actually do this. And then coming out in the third quarter, my favorite, well, no, it's not my favorite play of the whole game. My favorite play of the whole game is Mike Sainers still, swatting that ball in the fourth quarter. Just an amazing defensive play. And I actually about 5 minutes before we started recording, I saw a Blue by 90 post where they posted where Mike Sanders still started on that play. I didn't even realize he started on the previous or the opposite hash on the complete other side of the field. Anyway, I digress. So coming out in the third quarter,
it's almost though it is literally though almost as if he stopped time in that moment. I just have to say, and slid up in there, the way that he slid up in between his hands and just knocked it out. It was like he stopped time or something. It was crazy to watch. I can't even believe it.
1,000%. I'm so excited to talk about that play. I kind of got ahead of myself in the timeline of the game here, but one of my 2 or 3 favorite plays was kind of slept on. It happened so fast that we didn't even have time to process it. Michigan comes out down 20-17 in the third quarter, and it's at 4th and 1 on our own 30-yard line. I mean, that's a punt. You got to punt the ball. You can't give Ohio State the ball up 3 on our own 30-yard line to start the second half. What does Harbaugh do and what does the team do? We don't waste any time. Immediately when we come up short on that third down, he runs Donovan Edwards with one hand up the gut, picks up the first down, and it changes the entire trajectory of the game because then we go down there and I believe that's the drive that set up the Colston Loveland bomb. Then we went up 24-20 at that point. Just absolutely just ballsy move. Like Harbaugh, his whole game plan, like he was playing to win this game. He was playing absolutely fearless, and I love that call.
I just have to say my favorite personal favorite play of the game was Khalil Mullings. Oh my gosh. Like that was just coaching masterclass by Jim Harbaugh because first of all, he was sure to get Mullings in there earlier in the game for a attempted fullback type maneuver up the middle. And the whole fan base is like, what are you doing? That's stupid. That's ridiculous. He tries it again. It is so believable that Jim Harbaugh is going to run this guy, this linebacker up the middle in Michigan versus Ohio State, only for him to stop short and deliver that pass, which was a little sloppy, but it got there. And that was just so ballsy of Jim Harbaugh to do something that we haven't seen all year. So unlike Jim Harbaugh, to do something like that, it was just, it's got to be one of my favorite takeaways from the game.
Here's what I think. I think he was setting that play up against Ohio State all year long. I think he's been thinking about that play since the preseason. And he knows like we're gonna run the ball just a ridiculous amount of times behind this amazing offensive line. And then, as I'm thinking about it right now, that was probably supposed to be Donovan Edwards making that throw. You know what I mean? That was probably a Donovan Edwards play because
that is probably correct.
Because Corum, it was going to be the number one guy just killing them. He was probably waiting on a 4th and 1 where they absolutely needed it, and he was going to have Donovan fake like he's running up the gut and throw it downfield to the tight end or somebody that breaks leg. I'm sure he was scheming that up. And then what happens? Corum's out. Donovan Edwards literally has one hand. He's not going to throw the ball with a cast on his hand. And so, what does he do? He brings in a backup linebacker, and runs the play anyway. And man, that throw, I mean, it was not a good
props
throw.
to Schoon, by the way,
yeah,
for backing up a little bit and still making the catch, even though the guy was hot on his pursuit. Schoon still reeled it in. It was just that got me hyped, man. That was amazing.
All of it. That ball had the trajectory of a Steph Curry 3-pointer, dude. That was not a good throw. It went way up in the air. But I didn't even doubt it when I saw that and it was in the air. I was like, this is a catch. Because of what you just referenced. There, like belief was in the air. Like everybody just believed. Like, holy shit, we're gonna beat them again. We're playing fearless. We're killing it. So yeah, Harbaugh's going for it in his own territory and picking it up. We got trick plays, and then the game is still within reach. And then what happens? Michigan just settles right into their identity, right? That a couple good blocks. And then Donovan Edwards runs for 2 long touchdowns and just puts the game out of reach. And Ohio State sold out to stop the run, and they did really well in the first half. And Urban Meyer, was saying there's no doubt that Ohio State will stop the run, and he was probably feeling pretty good about himself for about a quarter and a half. But Michigan settled right into their identity and proved that no matter who you are, we can still line up late in the game and run the ball down your throat and win the game. So, I mean, there's so much more to talk about, but I think we really hit the highlights. Let me just give you a moment to just share, your experience or any highlights of the game that stood out to you. I mean, it was just absolutely amazing, wasn't it?
It really was, Mike, and you can't say enough good things about it. It was a total team effort. Like you said at the beginning of the show, if I could give a game ball to literally everybody on the team, I would, because you can point out a specific moment for everyone. Makari Page getting an interception, you know what I mean? Like Khalil Mullings with the pass to Schoonmaker, you know what I mean? So just every layer of this Michigan team showed out yesterday and had a moment, whether it be Mike Sainristil swiping that pass out, Mike Barrett making his big hits that he was making. Just everyone had a moment, and like it just felt like last year, you know, everyone had that moment, except we did it in their house in more dominant fashion, and we crushed their spirits. I mean, it was just a beautiful sight to see.
Well, and this was the final domino in the changing of the guard, right? Because the narrative was like Harbaugh's on the hot seat. He can't beat his rivals. He can't win road games. He can't win top 10 games. And at last year, we systematically started to knock out every single one of those narratives and was like, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. And we kind of reemerged as this prominent college football program. But everybody, and Michigan fans included, everybody had that little bit of feeling is like, this could be a one-hit wonder, right? Like this could be a one-hit wonder, and then we settle back into the 9-3 like teams, but then the Ohio State's 12-0 playing for the playoffs, and this was the moment where Michigan shifted the entire culture of the program. We rewrote the history books. We are now literally on top of college football, not just the Big Ten. We are on top of college football. You can make an argument that Michigan should be the number one team in the country. A damn good argument. We might see them come in at number 2, but you can make a damn good argument that we're the number one team in the country. And this is as high as we have been as a program since Charles Woodson and that amazing 1997 team. I mean, it is great to be a Michigan Wolverine, is it not?
I mean, it is so great to be a Michigan Wolverine. And it is literally like, it's just crazy for me to for me to take that game in yesterday. It just I still feel like it's just surreal. Like it isn't even real. It's been a long time coming, man. You know, a lot of us from our generation grew up in that Rich Rod era, you know what I mean? Like we had to endure that in the prime years of our college football fandom as youngsters, you know what I mean? So it's just been beautiful to be a part of the ride, you know what I mean? We love our Wolverines regardless if they would have lost that game or not yesterday. I was pretty content on this season, no matter what happened. And they only proved to me even more that this is one of the greatest Michigan teams to grace the field in a long, long time.
Yeah, and just shout out to everybody, the real fans that watched the games all the way to the end when we were 3-9 with Rich Rod and 5-7 with Rich Rod. And then we had those Brady Hoke teams that were just not that good. And shout out to all the fans that stayed true, watched the games all the way to the end, because man, it was miserable. I mean, as one of the people that did that and was there, I'm just old enough to remember 95, 96, 97, 98 when Michigan was winning the Big Ten, and then the Mike Hart and Braylon Edwards years were still really solid years of Michigan football. And then there was that when Lloyd Carr retired and we dropped off a cliff. I mean, those were some hard years. And as a diehard Michigan fan, to get back to prominence, and then you could make an argument that even saying back to prominence is not even an accurate statement now, because we're moving into uncharted territory. Like we're moving into like fielding Yost numbers at the turn of like the 1900s, right? And that's when football was a different game. Like dudes were wearing leather helmets and shit. Like we're now moving into this is the best 2-year stretch Michigan winning wise has ever had, right? Because they didn't used to play as many games. And so now, like, we're playing with house money. We're one game away from this being the winningest Michigan football team ever.